power struggle going on about the direction of the Republican Party over everything from foreign policy to the role of national security to defunding Obamacare. And Texas freshman Senator Ted Cruz, well, he's right smack dab in the thick of all of it. He's only served in the Senate for less than 8 months, and he's brushed aside talk of 2016, but he may have an early edge anyway. The Tea Party favorite has been serving up more red meat than the Salt Lick. The Salt Lick, that's an amazing barbecue joint in his home state, if you haven't had the pleasure. Over the weekend, Senator Cruz won one of the first GOP straw polls for the 2016 race, and Senator Cruz joins me right now in studio. So exciting. Welcome to the lead. Good to have you here, sir.
Jake, it's great to be with you. I have to say, by invoking the Salt Lick, you're making me hungry and wish I were back in Austin right now.
Well, we all wish we were in Austin right now. I want to start right now. The Pope sat through 82 minutes of direct questioning, answering every question, and I'm hoping we can get through 8 minutes of it right now with direct answers. You're known for your candor. Your father...
And I can promise you there will be nowhere near the wisdom that came from the Holy Father.
Or from me as well. So your father is a preacher. He said in an interview that he used to tell you that God has destined you for greatness. Now, I know you're going to tell me that you're focused on your work in the Senate. I understand that. But in the name of candor, tell me what are some of the things going through your mind as you decide whether or not you're going to seek something else, something greater, as your father might say.
Well, Jake, look, I love my dad. He's been my hero my whole life, but I suspect I'm not the only person who has had an overeager parent. And, you know, what I can tell you is what I'm trying to focus on right now is I think this country is facing enormous challenges, fiscal and economic challenges, where a great many Texans, a great many Americans are worried about the direction we're going, are worried about the stagnant economic growth. For the last 4 years, our economy has averaged 0.9% growth a year. People are hurting, they're not getting jobs, and the people who have been hurt the most by the Obama economy have been the most vulnerable among us. They've been young people, they've been Hispanics, they've been African Americans, they've been single moms. And so my focus every day is trying to get back to the free market principles, to the constitutional liberties that made America that great land of opportunity.
But your focus right now is trying to defund Obamacare. And, in fact, you're pushing a strategy, you and some other senators, where there will be a showdown. And ultimately, it could come down to shutting down the government if the Democrats in the Senate and the President don't agree to defund Obamacare. I don't know. Well, first of all, how would that help all those vulnerable people that you talk about, who many of whom are benefiting from Obamacare?
I think the top priority of every elected official, Republican or Democrat, should be restoring economic growth. And nothing is hurting economic growth more than Obamacare. Look, there is bipartisan consensus. This bill isn't working. The lead Senate author of Obamacare, Democrat Max Baucus, described it as a, quote, huge train wreck.
Well, I think he was talking about how people weren't prepared for it and there wasn't people weren't ready, and that's one of the reasons why the mandate, the employer mandate, has been delayed. But I want to talk...
And let's take, for example, even the unions are starting to turn on President Obama. James Huff, the president of the Teamsters, said Obamacare is destroying the 40-hour work week that has been the foundation of the American middle class. This thing isn't working. It's killing jobs. It's causing people to have their hours forcibly reduced to 29 hours a week. And as you noted, the president unilaterally, contrary to law, decided to give a waiver to giant corporations. Now, in my view, hardworking American families deserve that same waiver because it isn't working and it's hurting people, and we should stand up and defund it.
The strategy you're talking about, though, I want to read some of the reviews from your fellow Republicans. Congressman Tom Cole calls this a suicidal political tactic, the political equivalent of throwing a temper tantrum. Senator Richard Burr, a conservative from North Carolina, the dumbest idea I've ever heard of, he says. Senator Tom Coburn, in an interview with Byron York, said, I'd be leading the charge if I thought this would work, but it will not work. It's not an achievable strategy. It's creating the false impression that you can do something when you can't, and it's dishonest. They're saying this wouldn't work, the Democrats control the Senate and the White House, and that you're giving false hope to conservatives. Your response?
You know, Jake, there is frustration all over this country with career politicians in both parties. Why? Because they focus on maintaining power rather than standing for principle. We have a fight we can win. If Obamacare isn't working, this is our single best opportunity to defund it in the next 63 days.
The president will veto it. I mean,
if 41 Republicans stand together in the Senate, or if 218 Republicans stand together in the House, we can win this fight. Here's what I think should happen. I think the House should pass a continuing resolution that funds the entire federal government, except Obamacare, and that prohibits spending federal government money to implement Obamacare because it isn't working. Now, the next step, we know what will happen. President Obama, Harry Reid will scream and yell,
right,
those mean, nasty Republicans are threatening to shut down the government. And here's where Republicans have to stand up and win the argument. Say, look, we voted to keep the government open. Why is President Obama threatening to shut down the government in order to force Obamacare? He's granted a waiver for giant corporations. Why not give the same waiver to the American people?
You know what else the House and Senate voted for? Obamacare. They passed it. I mean, it's the law of the land.
Well, they did. But, you know, the great thing about the Constitution is there are checks on an overreaching executive. President Obama, in moving the employer mandate for big corporations till after the next election, number one, it's a heck of an admission that this law isn't working, because if it were good, he'd want it to kick in before the next election. But number two, there's nothing in the law that gives him the power to do that. And when you have an administration that's picking winners and losers, that's playing Chicago-style politics, the most powerful constitutional check that Congress has is the power of the purse, the ability to defund it. And all we need for this to happen is 41 Republicans in the Senate to stand up together, or 218 Republicans in the House.
Well, okay. I want to move on to another topic, which is...
Let me briefly mention one thing, but before we move on.
Yeah.
Which is, if it depends upon politicians in Washington, it ain't going to happen. The only way this is going to happen is if an army of grassroots Americans stand up. It's why this week was a national website was launched, don'tfundit.com, don'tfundit.com, because if we see thousands or millions of Americans calling their senators, calling their elected representatives, saying, don't fund this train wreck that is killing jobs and hurting our health care, that's the only way to get the elected representatives to listen to the people.
I want to talk about a couple other topics before I let you go. There is this debate, this other debate between Republicans about the direction of national security in the Republican Party. Chris Christie, the governor of New Jersey, had this to say.
Of libertarianism that's going through both parties right now and making big headlines, I think is a very dangerous thought.
The strain of libertarianism, I imagine he's talking about not just Senator Rand Paul, but also you, being a dangerous thought. What's your view on that?
Well, look, Governor Christie is certainly entitled to his views. He's entitled to respect his views. You know, he mentioned that the idea of protecting our privacy he thought was esoteric. And it seems to me that the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment to our Constitution, the protections of the civil liberties of Americans, they aren't esoteric. They're the foundation of this country. Principles of liberty in the Constitution are the foundation of this country. And one of the things that has been so dismaying about the Obama administration is we have seen a consistent onslaught on our constitutional rights, whether it's the First Amendment, and they're targeting reporters like the AP, like Fox News.
More so than Bush?
Absolutely, yes.
Really?
The degree of hostility to constitutional rights demonstrated by this administration is unprecedented. Yet you can go through literally one amendment at a time. First Amendment, targeting the press. I suspect you're not thrilled about targeting the AP or Fox News.
I mean, I just think that when you look at what the Obama administration in relation to what the Bush administration has done, you can say that there are a lot of similarities. And I don't know what you were doing during the Bush years, but perhaps you were raising the same kind of protest about these things then. The NSA, there was warrantless wiretapping.
Let me answer your question, what I was doing during the Bush years. I was the Solicitor General in Texas, the chief lawyer for the state in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. When President Bush was president, he signed an order that purported to order the state courts to obey the World Court. And on behalf of the state of Texas, I went before the U.S. Supreme Court and argued that the order from President George W. Bush was unconstitutional, that he had no authority to give away U.S. sovereignty. And we ended up winning 6-3 with the Supreme Court striking down Bush's order and concluding the World Court has no authority over our U.S. justices.
I have many more questions. You're going to have to come back. Senator Ted Cruz, we really thank you for coming and sharing your views. Coming up next,